start with the NBA Finals, which are now, as very few people predicted, tied at 1. I did not think this would be a sweep. I did think this would be a 5-game series. This is certainly not the game I thought Miami would win. We will get to in about 10 minutes whether or not our thoughts have changed overall on this series. But let's focus on last night first. Miami starts hot, and they start hot thanks in part to the fact that Max Strus had a law of averages moment. Max Strus is a really good shooter. He went 0 for 9 from 3 in Game 1. He missed a lot of open looks. He got many of those same looks in Game 2, and he hit not all of them, but damn near. In that first quarter, he was awesome. He kept getting open. He kept finding himself open. And that's also in part thanks to the Miami defense being significantly better. And which is something we'll talk about, how the cyclical nature of basketball, runs feed themselves in the second quarter with the Nuggets. But Miami was in a much better place thanks to starting Kevin Love, something that I think a lot of people, ourselves, Anthony and I included, thought would happen because it just made a lot of sense. In Game 1, Aaron Gordon went bananas because he was way bigger than everyone guarding him. This was a very easy decision for Eric Spoelstra, also because Caleb Martin was sick and has not been feeling well. But the size discrepancy and what Kevin Love is and isn't defensively is, I think, overstated. Like, he's not a good defender, but he's not unplayably bad. Like, this dude's played in championship games, or championship series multiple times in his career. He's been on winning teams for a lot of his career. He knows how to play within a scheme very well. He's a very smart basketball player. And also, he's a tremendous rebounder, not quite as good as he was earlier in his career. He was one of the best in the league. But also his ability to start the break, his intelligence offensively, the way he keeps the ball moving. He's a good shooter. Like, it's a pretty easy decision. And also when it comes to his defensive liabilities, a guy like Aaron Gordon isn't going to take advantage of them. He's not going to beat you off the dribble with consistency. If Aaron Gordon's beating you off the dribble, okay, you live with that. The Nuggets are out of what they want to be. And so it just takes away the easy bully ball size mismatch, and you saw the impact of that in the first quarter. That said, Nikola Jokic, I've been saying his name wrong the whole time, and I apologize, especially to the Jokic family, because his brothers are very large and they could beat me up. Nikola Jokic sensed the game was getting away early and said, enough of that, we're done here. And he took 9 shots in the first quarter when he took 6 in the first 3 quarters of Game 1. Miami played things completely differently, but also Jokic was aggressive and smart and sensed the game and was able to pull them close. And then Denver goes on this massive run late first into the second. Overall, it was a 40-14 run. Teams don't win games in which they are on the wrong end, on the 14 end of a 40-14 run. And there's kind of a moment, it's about a 15-point game, it's 50-35. It looks like, okay, that was cute, Miami, the first quarter, but Denver woke up now. And it happened, by the way, when Jokic was on the bench. And then somehow, some way, Miami claws back into it by halftime. And they're within striking distance. And then obviously, early fourth quarter, they have the Duncan Robinson 10-0 run. But we'll get there. The thing about the second quarter run for Miami, which I think is informational for them and informative for them moving forward, things they have to avoid at all costs, is it was cyclical. Miami missed a shot, which led to them not being able to set their defense, which led to Denver having better offensive results. And I think that piece of data also reflects why Denver didn't call timeout at the end of the game. Michael Malone all but said it out loud. He's like, we didn't want Miami to set their defense. Because when Miami calls time, or when there's a timeout, Miami comes out in something different. Michael Malone, they call timeout. He draws up a play for man-to-man. Miami comes out in zone. Well, there goes your play. You draw up a play thinking they might go zone, and they play man-to-man. Well, there goes your play. Now you got to draw up 2 plays. Now you're trying to rush things. Like, Miami's too unpredictable. Just play. Oftentimes, the best thing you can do to them is get them in unorganized mode, because when they're organized, they're great. And they're so good at getting organized. But you can't get organized off of long misses where the other team's getting out in transition. You just have to match up with who you're by and hope that you live with that. And it got Miami in some bad spots. They had some live ball turnovers, including the big Murray dunk where he kind of powers through a Strus block attempt, flexes on him, the whole deal. Like, those live ball turnovers, like even if Miami turns the ball over but they throw it out of bounds and it's a dead ball situation, that's so much better for them than a live ball turnover or a long rebound. Or even, the thing is with Denver, you just miss a shot. Jokic gets a regular old rebound that falls off the rim. He's out on the break, and you're playing catch-up transition defense. Miami has to continue to find ways, and whether it's with great transition defense to slow things down at the point of attack. Like, I would almost tell my guards, instead of sprinting back, like, pick up Jokic full court. Just slow the ball. Like, you obviously have to have somebody sprint back because otherwise he just throws the ball over the top to whoever the free runner is. But you have to find a way to slow him down and not let him get a 75-foot full head of steam and have the offense start in motion. You've got to slow things down if you're Miami, and they kind of did that in the second half, which was why, obviously, the outcome was very, very different. The other thing about Miami defensively, and I don't know why I've never had this thought before until the end of game one, and I thought about this after the show on Friday, so I didn't have a chance to say it, and then I was curious if it would hold true in game two. I kind of tested my theory watching, and 100% it works. There's two reasons why the zone works for Miami, specifically against Denver, but the first one is the reason zones work in general, which is it lets little guys do little guy stuff and big guys do big guy stuff. And that's especially true against Denver, where Denver is a mismatch hunting team, and they have so many guys that can create mismatches, and even like a mismatch against their own position, right? Jamal Murray's a great post-up guy, and Jokic is a great perimeter guy. But it's not that, like, Gabe Vincent guarding Nikola Jokic is a problem if Jokic can post him up. Gabe Vincent getting all up in Jokic's grill 28 feet from the basket and defending him if he's trying to take him off the dribble is not nearly as problematic. He can just get in the way. He's quick enough to stay in front of him. And if Jokic ultimately winds up shooting over the top, fine, as long as that is a tough 2 or even 3. Like, make that a contested off the dribble something with a 6'1" guy doing the hand in the face business. Like, that's fine. Because if he drives and backs him down all the way into the lane, well, now Adebayo's waiting there and can do big guy stuff, right? By the same token, Jamal Murray posting up Gabe Vincent, posting up Kyle Lowry, although good luck posting up Kyle Lowry because he's a human brick. Posting up some of these smaller guys, you can't do that against a zone. So for a team that likes to hunt mismatches and put guys in positions defensively that they're not used to being in, that's what a zone eliminates. It also eliminates pick and roll basketball, which is where where Denver's at its best. So I do think that Denver can make some adjustments. We'll talk about those in the next segment because they have the skill to beat Miami. The idea that the Miami zone can't work against Denver or that it's a bad idea, I think was a little overstated based off data, based off the fact that Denver murdered zones in the regular season, based off the fact that they do have the talent that we'll talk about in 5 minutes and what you need to do to beat a zone. But they have done a bad job adjusting to it so far. And I think the reason why is the underlying principle that you let guards do guard stuff, you let big guys do big guy stuff, and that eliminates mismatches for a team in Denver that is a team full of walking mismatches because of their versatile skill sets. Last thing I'll say real quick about Game 2 is Bam Adebayo's decisiveness right now and the amount of offense they're running through him is really remarkable for a center. They made him the point guard last night. The concerted effort to get Bam the ball as if it was Chris Paul with the Clippers, where it's like, no, every possession starts with Chris Paul because he's the best point guard in the league. And why would you have anyone else dribble the ball across half court and initiate your offense? That's how the Heat were treating Bam last night, just because they wanted to get Jokic in a bunch of pick and rolls. They wanted to make Jokic defend, and it worked. And as Miami made that run to start the fourth quarter, it showed kind of the inverse truth of the zone theory. Like, Jokic is kind of hanging out at the free throw line in no man's land, like slightly above it, when Bam is dishing. And he only had, I think, 4 assists in the game, but it felt like they all came at the start of the fourth quarter and led to some of those Duncan Robinson and Game Vincent buckets where they're all mean-mugging and side-eyeing Denver as they take the lead there at the start of the fourth. And what you can do as a guard in that situation, if your guy is just dishing all over the place, is you put more pressure on the ball. And Jokic wasn't comfortable doing it or didn't know to do it, or just like it wasn't his instinct to be like, oh, I can make this pass more difficult by jamming up the ball handler or making Bam turn his back to protect the ball. And instead, he's just kind of floating there in this drop coverage, kind of clog up the lane, but I'm not actually in the lane, no man's land. And as a result, Miami's cutters were able to get open. And when, they cut off the cutters, there's shooters open. And it just was easy for Miami. And that lack of attention to detail, I hate to say it, and I'm not saying Denver's not going to win, because I still think they are, but you see in that moment why a defense the caliber of the Denver Nuggets doesn't typically win championships. So, how do they adjust? And can they do the things they need to offensively? And do they even need to adjust offensively in order to win? We'll dive into that next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. And whether or not anything that we saw last night changes our opinion on the series. I would say no, other than I think this is probably going to go 6 or 7 games instead of 5. 5 was in part a number because I kind of figured Denver would win 2 games at home and then ultimately split in Miami and then win game 5 at home. Well, now if they split in Miami, this thing goes back to Denver 2-2. They win game 5. Let's see if they can win game 6 in Miami, or it takes a game 7 in Denver. I also thought this would be, and I guess I should clarify, like when I said I thought it would be a 5-game series, it's not because I didn't think that it would be non-competitive. Just the way the games fall with the schedule and everything like that, I thought Denver had a really great chance to win 5 or 4 competitive games in 5 tries. But this was always going to be a competitive series because Miami makes things extremely difficult. They are so game plan disciplined, and they're willing to try stuff. Like, Spoelstra's a genius. And I think Spo fully embraced last night a tactic that I certainly was in favor of, which is let Jokic get his. Make it difficult, but know Jokic is going to get his, and do not allow other people to beat you. And it's pretty well reflected in the box score that was exactly what they did. Obviously, Jokic doesn't have a lot of assists last night. I think he only winds up with 4. But it's not just that. It's not like that can happen if guys miss shots. But that's not what happened last night. They didn't get to take shots last night. Jamal Murray doesn't have his usual output. Now he has a couple big shots, obviously, in the fourth quarter. He gets a shot off to tie the game. And let's not pretend like this game wasn't close last night. And let's also not pretend that it didn't take one of the single best quarters you will ever see offensively from a team. Miami last night had like an offensive rating of 186, I think, in the fourth quarter. AKA, if they did that over the course of 100 possessions, they would score 186 points. That's insane. The best offenses in the league are like 120. They were at 186. But last night, 3-point attempts, Denver, a team that is super 3-point happy, only takes 28. Only takes 28. Miami took 35 last night. And, I would say about 4 of those of the Denver 28 are because Michael Porter Jr. lost his mind and became young Michael Porter Jr. again, who doesn't play smart NBA basketball. Murray had 8 attempts. He had the most on the team, but Caldwell Pope only has 3. Gordon has a couple. Again, Porter had 3 or 4 that were off the dribble, not the in-rhythm types that he tends to knock down at a much, much higher clip. Jeff Green only has 1. Bruce Brown has 3. Christian Brown has no 3-point attempts. He did have that nice run in the second quarter, but no 3-point attempts. They just did a really good job of limiting the attempts of everyone. No one had double-digit shots outside of Murray and Jokic. They embrace that. So the question becomes, what can Denver do, and why do I think Denver will still win the series? I think it's as simple as they have the talent to overcome the things that the Heat are doing. They've got to start using some of their slashing and cutting more. I think someone like Bruce Brown is really important. Obviously, Aaron Gordon's really important. But I think what tends to happen against zone is teams get incredibly stagnant, and I think that's the worst thing that Denver can do. I think they need to actually up the motion. They have great cutters and great shooters and a lot of pieces that are interchangeable and are good at both of those things. So can you get Jokic to the free throw line and essentially have him post up from there, knowing that at 7 feet tall, he's got the floor vision to see everything, and you send a cutter through and then fill the spot that he came from with the shooter. If you cover the cutter, now the shooter's open. If you cover the shooter, well, now you're giving up a wide open dunk. And if you're scrambling everybody out to the shooters, now you got more space for Jokic inside. And I'll leave you with one more stat that I think is something to watch for in Game 3 that I would bet would change. Jokic only had 9 post-ups last night. 9. Lowest of the playoffs. They averaged, I think, I was listening to Zach Lowe's pod with Brian Windhurst, their post-game pod. I think Zach said, and the reason I say I think is because it sounds so preposterous to say this out loud. I'm fairly sure that in this game, they averaged over 2 points per possession per post-up. So that means every time Jokic touched the ball in the post, they got better than a 2-pointer out of it. They either got a foul and 1, they got a 3-pointer. Like on average, that was the result. 2 points. It might have just been the post touches that he passed out of because open threes. And with 9, you're talking about a small sample size. But needless to say, it was really effective. And so what the zone does is it limits the amount of post-ups. But I think Denver has to find a way to get Jokic on the post more, let him isolate and either throw in these little hook shots or find the shooters around when the defense collapse. And I think that's a formula for success. That said, it's really about the defense because I know the Nuggets scoring 108 doesn't feel like a good output for them, but it's because the game was slow. Miami's playing this at closer to their pace. They're not playing 120 possessions, 115 possessions. These, in fact, they're not even cracking 100. Because the Nuggets' offensive rating in this game was 126. The problem was Miami's was 129. That is a pace that's the best offense in the league if you were to hold that for the entire year. Both of those numbers. So what it tells you is the Nuggets actually offensively last night were pretty good. They've got to get the pace a little bit faster and play and tighten the screws on defense so that Miami is forced to execute at that level more often, which I don't think they're quite capable of. And obviously, if they tighten the screws on defense, it becomes harder to do so.
This is Wes Unseld Jr.
Field left wing outside the arc, stops, takes a 3. It's there.
You listen to The Hoffman Show on Team 980.
Assassin-like.
The Odyssey app.